I'm
Starting
Crystal.
recording.
Hi, I'm Crystal. I have 7 years of healthcare experience as a nurse. I have been a stay-at-home mom now for 5 years, and I am ready to re-enter the workforce. I started my Salesforce journey last summer. I got certified in November, and now I am on the job hunt. My goal for job hunting is to network. And through networking, I met Christine King doing coffee chats and just, reaching out to people, learning about their story and even their company. So I think that's a great way if you are on your job hunting journey. So Christine King, I'm very glad that you are here because I had some very insightful takeaways from our meeting, and I'm glad that you can share it with the group.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Can you please tell us a little about yourself and what you do in Salesforce now?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Christine. I am currently traveling for work, so you can see my lovely background. I'm actually at the KPMG office in Denver. Let's see, I started with Salesforce in 2021. I did a career development program called Talent Stacker, which is how I met Lori as well. I know Crystal is part of that program too. So that's how I kind of got my start in Salesforce. Before that, I had about 5 years of healthcare experience, specifically as a registered nurse. I worked in 3 different specialties over that time. I started out in a cancer oncology center on the post-surgical floor. Then I moved to being an operating room nurse. And then I moved into being a high-risk labor and delivery nurse, specifically working in the triage department. So all of my kind of experience has been as a registered nurse in healthcare, but I know that all of us have really varied backgrounds in healthcare on this call. So even if I say, my nursing skills, that really just means my healthcare skills. So I apologize in advance if I say nursing skills instead. I started out actually as a demo engineer in Salesforce. That was my first Salesforce job. I was working for a company called Cloud Biz, which is an app exchange Salesforce company. And they specialize in clinical trials. So I was doing a lot of in the moment BA work where I would listen to the potential customer and hear their pain points and then try to demo areas of our software that can address those pain points. And so that's where a lot of those translational skills came in. And then kind of from that, I really only worked there for about 2 months. And through networking, Crystal, networking is awesome. That's how a lot of us get our start in Salesforce. It's how we really level up our careers and just make friends too. But through networking, I got a job offer with the US Air Force. So now I'm a civilian working for the US Air Force. We're doing a complete cloud transformation. It's called the A1 Digital Transformation Activity. So A1 means it's HR. So our benefits elections, our pay, our retirements, anything that has to do with HR processes, we're taking from the legacy system and we're putting it into Salesforce. I started out as a junior dev, actually, and I don't know if you all are really familiar, but a lot of organizations call it developer, and really it's admin work because I wasn't doing any coding. I wasn't using Apex. I was doing declarative stuff left and right. I was working with a lot of our contract partners. So we use a UI contractor called Squid, SKUID, which stands for Scalable Kit of User Interface Design, which essentially has API connections, REST connections, SOA connections with all sorts of platforms, Salesforce being one of them. So we use them to essentially display all of our Salesforce stuff on community pages and do a lot of almost like flow-like automations without actually using flow. But that's how I started this job. And then I actually recently this year got promoted into a Scrum Master role. So I don't do a lot of declarative development. I don't do a lot of, I don't spend a lot of time in the setup area anymore, except for provisioning users sometimes. I do a lot of organization. I do a lot of public speaking. I do a lot of stakeholder management. I do a lot of project management type skills and activities. And that's a really good fit for me. That's kind of where I wanted to go anyway, is kind of the big picture stuff while also managing the details, and really putting the hands-on keyboard tasks to really, really talented developers. So that's kind of where I am.
Wow, what a journey so far, right? That's excellent.
Yeah.
So you said you started off at Cloud Biz. How did you get that first job? Because that's the hardest job to get, your first job getting into Salesforce. So how did you kind of overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so I really leaned into LinkedIn. I did a lot of networking on LinkedIn. I did a lot of commenting on other people's posts. I did a lot of content creation on my end, where I would make a little video about just like a little flow that I did or a project I was working on. I never made it as far as Lori, and I never had a portfolio. She's the inspiration to us all on the portfolio side. But I did do some content creation so that I could showcase my skills. And then I just did a lot of networking, kind of like you were saying, Crystal, and a recruiter from CloudBiz actually reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I went through their interview process and got hired. I think a little bit was timing, kind of like everything in life. Everything is a little bit of preparation and a little bit of luck, right? So I was prepared, and they were doing a massive hiring spree at the time. They ended up hiring quite a few people from my career development program. But it was really just the LinkedIn networking that helped me get over that initial first job challenge.
Did you apply to jobs, or were you just very present on LinkedIn and networked with others?
I did apply to a few jobs. I did not end up sending out nearly as many as some people report. You know, I've heard new job seekers sending out hundreds of applications, and I count myself very lucky in that. So I only sent out probably about less than 10 job applications. I think also, in my mind, there's two parts of the application process itself, right? There's getting past the paper resume submittal. So sometimes they have SEO or an algorithm that picks people's applications out and identifies them as people who are worthy of an interview, right? And so that's like resume optimization, like having your keywords in there, having a resume that matches their job description, showcasing your skills on your resume, on your hard resume, in a way that makes you stand out. And that'll get you past that first chapter of the application process. But then there's the interview process. And I think being able to translate your healthcare experience into technical language is really what's going to get you at least that second interview, if not hired. Because I remember my first interview was with Deloitte, and I was doing their SCS program, their Salesforce Consulting Select program. And I made it through about 3 of their interviews. But in that second interview, I remember being asked things like, tell us a time when, and then he would insert a technical situation, or tell us about something you built. And at that point in time, I was so used to healthcare interviews that I didn't have the language that I needed to tell him about the time that I did something. I remember distinctly rattling off about being a triage nurse and how I improved my triage process. And at the end of my probably 7-minute speech, it was a long speech about how I was an awesome triage nurse, and I changed my OTOS process to get patients from the desk back to my triage beds faster, and my communication between my doctors and my anesthesia team, and like blah, 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 blah. And at the end of it, he was like, I don't really know what triage means. I was like,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Okay, well, I wish you had stopped me about 7 minutes ago, sir, but let me try to back up and talk about something that I've built in Salesforce, even if it was like a playground, right? So I think being able to, yeah, I think being able to translate your work experience into language that at least the hiring people in tech will understand, and then your hiring team's always going to have some technical people on it. They might not be on every single interview, but being able to say, okay, my triage process improved in these ways, but really what I did was improve these KPI, key performance indicators. Really what I did was I improved the user experience so that we were capturing the data that was relevant to our acceptance criteria. It's really just about the language of it. So if you can figure out how to translate your healthcare into tech, that's really going to be helpful to get that job.
Right. I think you brought such a good point there because we're so used to the healthcare world and medical world, which is so different than business Salesforce world, that for myself, I know I'm having a difficult time learning the language and to start speaking medical, right? And you really nailed it there. How do you learn the language of such a new world?
I think there are,
So should we take more courses or like agile method, right? So would it be to our benefit to learn more about Scrum?
I think there are different strategies in learning a new language in general, learning a new vocabulary in general, and everybody's going to be different. So I'll tell you how I did it.
Okay.
I didn't really want to take more courses. I felt like I had really honed in on Trailhead. I'm getting this admin certification and I'm doing this learning experience. So I didn't really want to take more courses, but what I did was kind of trying to do an immersion experience in my own life. So I was watching like David Kalu YouTube videos, and I was reading a lot of LinkedIn posts that were relevant to Salesforce and relevant to tech. And I was making friends in my career development program, and you can do that through this Healthcare Heroes group, and just meet with people with your coffee chats, because the more you speak the language, the easier it's going to be to do that in interviews and in the job that you get after that. Trying to just have as much exposure as possible, going to live events. I haven't been in a while because I've been traveling a lot for work, but I used to go to Cleveland. I live in Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland Salesforce Saturday. Almost every city is going to have a Salesforce Saturday. You can go in person if you want, or you can join a Salesforce Saturday group online. And they meet every Saturday morning, and different groups have different events, but I would just go to a coffee shop in Cleveland. And I met a guy who's an architect, a Salesforce architect for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And him and I would just like chat about what he was working on, and kind of listening to him talk and me kind of talking about what I was working on was really helpful. So just trying to immerse yourself in that language and practice it as much as possible is going to be helpful to get that kind of acumen and vocabulary. And that especially will be important when you're in an interview, because everybody's nervous in an interview. I don't care who you are and what you say. If you want a job, especially that first job, you don't feel worthy necessarily, and you're trying to prove to somebody that you're legitimate, you're going to be nervous. So if you start practicing when you're not nervous, it's going to be easier to call upon that language when you are nervous.
Okay, informational chats and doing coffee chats with people, just random people in the Salesforce world will help you speak the language, right? And learn how you yourself can present yourself to others, and like you can practice your elevator pitch. You can come up with more intellectual questions and comments and learn about what they're doing in their role, what's relevant to their career as a business analyst. Why should we know all the admin stuff as a business analyst? thing.
Exactly,
So thank you.
exactly. And everybody has an opinion. And if you just ask them, they will share it. If you ask them a question and then you stop talking, they will tell you, just like we're doing right now. Like I'm talking a lot because you're asking me questions and no one's talking over me, right? Which is kind of rare in today's world. And everybody likes to be listened to and feel like you are valuing what they're saying. So whether it's a coffee chat, whether it's a Salesforce Saturday, whether you can get in on just one of those like community pages, the Salesforce Trailblazer community pages. There's a lot of free groups out there that you can join, or again, YouTube. YouTube is such a great resource. You can learn anything on there.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think Salesforce is such a unique community where everyone is so giving with the knowledge that they have. And I mean, I put out a lot of coffee chats out there just to meet and connect with people, get, a next lead to a job or whatever. And no one has denied me a coffee chat. So that's good because people want to talk about what they're doing, right? Like these people love talking and they like to talk about themselves. So what better way to do that than connecting with them through a coffee chat? So really
Absolutely.
emphasizing on networking if you are looking for a job. Christine, how did you translate your healthcare skills into self-worth lingo and creating your resume? Like
My
you gave such a really good example on it. I think you have you have good skills in it because I sent my resume to Christine before in order to have another pair of eyes who've been in Salesforce longer than me, and we have very similar backgrounds. So she understood what world I was coming from, and she can help me articulate to what they're looking for.
Absolutely. So I think a lot of it is understanding what skills you're utilizing when you're in healthcare. So maybe I am in my labor and delivery unit and I have a patient whose grandma is there and grandma is asking me questions and I'm answering her questions. On the surface, I'm just answering patient family questions, right? But really what I'm doing is I'm explaining highly technical healthcare concepts at a user level. So you can take that insular experience and say, I am really good at, obviously fancy it up. So like highly proficient at translating technical concepts to end users, doing end user training. If you're teaching a patient how to give themselves an insulin shot, you are doing end user training on highly technical concepts. My big one was I did a lot of chart review on my unit because we had a baby friendly designation, which is essentially nursing care has to follow XYZ steps right after a baby is born to continue that baby friendly designation. And we were on the cusp of losing that designation because we weren't reporting the right KPIs, right? Key performance indicators. And so I was just doing chart review and I was just reporting back what we were capturing and what we weren't. From a healthcare perspective, that's all I was doing, chart review. But when I took that and I applied to Salesforce jobs, I said I had experience being a SME, subject matter expert, and a business process owner because I am a nurse and I own that business process, right? I am the business in this situation. And I was a business process owner working with the software team because I was ultimately reporting that information to our Allscripts contractor, right? Who's doing our EHR software. I was a SME and BPO reporting KPI information and assisting the software team in improving the end user experience to capture more KPIs. So understanding what it is you are doing as a healthcare provider and translating that into technical language that they'll understand. And not only understand, they value it. They're like, wow, you were an SME, you were a BPO, wow, you're going to be a great Scrum Master because you can speak both languages. You really understand stakeholder management. Like as a triage nurse, I would take the patient from the front desk, assess her, ask her all these questions, take her back to my triage area, get her vitals, and then go report to the doctors on my assessments. I did my SBAR, right? Here's my situation. Here's my background. Here's my assessment. Here's my recommendation. What was I doing? I was doing stakeholder management because I have a family member, I have a patient, I have a team of doctors, which includes attendings, it includes residents, it includes interns. It might be a separate teams of doctors. If I have family medicine, if I have OB, then I also have anesthesia, which is its own beast. And you're organizing all of these stakeholders who ultimately have the same goal, right? Everybody wants to have a healthy baby, healthy mom at the end of this process. But they all have different priorities, and you have to do stakeholder management in order to have all of those priorities met in the right order to achieve the right outcome, right? So I think the best advice I can get is try to take a really high level top-down look at what it is you are doing in your healthcare job and figure out how to translate that into technical speak that they will understand and then value.
I really like what you did there, because I think that's amazing how you could translate that very simple thing that I do every day in such a language that they love. The recruiters, hiring managers, whoever you're talking to will love, and they can understand it, right? And we're not like going down a rabbit hole and back into our medical world and talking nonsense to them. So that was my biggest takeaway when I had our one-on-one talk. Was I was like, wow, I can't believe she just did that for me. Because that's important, and you need to put those words into the resume in order for them to see you and be more visible to others and give you a chance for that interview. And how to talk in an interview. That's exactly what we also have to demonstrate.
I think the other thing that's really important to keep in mind, I know us healthcare workers feel this every single day, but this is also true in tech, is that there's a lot of short staffing everywhere. And hiring managers and technical teams want to bring people on who don't need to be spoon-fed, who don't need hand-holding. And if you can convince them in an interview that you kind of know what you're talking about, so doing all of these translational things will legitimize you so that you don't sound quite so new. And then the second thing is to really lean into the qualities that you practice every day as a healthcare worker, that really translate into, hey, I'm Christine, and I know how to figure something out if I don't understand it. I know how to take initiative. I know how to stick with a problem. I know there's a lot of articles out there, even in this group, that are super helpful as far as like, here are the skills I used as a healthcare worker, whether it's, empathy or technical concepts or anything like that, that will also help you in a tech job. But the one that I see left out a lot, that I have leaned on a lot in my interviews and then honestly in my work experience, is perseverance. Because I can remember so many times as a nurse, in small ways and in big ways, where I was in a situation and all of my instincts were like, wow, it'd be great if we could just drop everything and get out of here right now. Whether it's, while my patient is totally crashing and I have to stay here and stick with it, I do not get to leave. Mm-hmm. Or somebody didn't show up to work to relieve me from my shift and I have to stay an extra 2 hours because I cannot abandon my patients. Or even so small as like, my patient is a really hard stick, but I got a blood draw and the lab lost my tubes. Like, you don't get to just give up. You either have to find the tubes or go poke your patient again. Like, you just don't get to quit and say like, well, oh, well, like, I'm just going to walk away. And that is very true in tech as well. Like AJ was talking earlier about like, I really want to like put my fist through my computer screen sometimes. Or the euphemism I like to use is like, where's my hammer? Because I'd really like to hit myself in the head right now. When you can't figure something out, or you're like, you guys, this is happening right now on my team, which is funny, Lori talking about acceptance criteria and how it's not right. And you think it's right, and you go and build a whole thing, and then you go back and the business is like, that's actually not what we wanted. You don't get to walk away from that. You have to stick with it and say, wow, okay, well, we just built a whole thing for a whole month and that's not what you wanted. So I guess we have to start over. Like, you don't get to walk away from that. So the perseverance of being a nurse or being a healthcare worker will really help in being a tech worker and being a Salesforce employee of any kind. So definitely look into those articles. They're awesome. I know there are a couple on Healthcare Heroes, but think about including perseverance as one of those like really highlighted qualities in your interviews too.
Never thought about that. So thank you so much. That's really good to know, because we do such hard things that we can't go get away from, right? And we think living healthcare can help us do that, but it's just a new world going into tech too. We just don't know about it yet.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, Crystal. I was definitely a COVID burnout nurse. I'm sure everybody can relate. When we were frontline healthcare workers, the burnout was so high during the pandemic and afterwards. That's essentially what drove me into Salesforce. And I came into it with this sort of rose-colored glasses view of like, okay, now all my problems are solved. And my life has gotten a lot better in some ways. Lori and I like to talk about requesting time off, right? Whereas a nurse, for me, I had to request off a vacation week a year in advance, a whole year. And if I had, 9 months in advance and I wanted to have a week off, I had to organize my schedule in a certain way where I worked 6 days in a row and then had 4 off, and then someone else covered for me. And then I called off on one of them, which is questionable. And then I worked 6 more days in a row on this end. It's like wild. So that part has gotten a lot better, but Salesforce jobs come with their own challenges and their own headaches and their own frustrations. I would choose Salesforce over being a nurse every single day of the week, but I definitely came into the Salesforce ecosystem thinking that all of my problems were going to go away because I got out of being a bedside nurse. So if that's you, I can relate, but just be prepared that it's still a job. It's still a job.
Bringing it up because in the Salesforce world, everything is so positive and happy, you can do it kind of thing, which is great because we do need that encouragement, especially if we're so new into it. I think we personally don't talk about the hardships, right? Like, it's hard in other ways, but at the same time, it's still worth it. So stick with it. But like you said, your problems still won't go away. But I'm sure you probably have also better work-life balance too, which is very important to a lot of people, which is why a lot of healthcare workers are getting into tech for that work-life balance.
Absolutely. And Lori, the pay is a lot better too. So a bigger paycheck and no night shift. Night shift was really killing me. So that was one thing I needed to get away from. And I do have a phrase that I repeat to myself when I start to get really stressed out. And that's it's not gunshots, it's not car accidents. Like, everybody, the business sometimes thinks that it's a life or death situation, whether you get something developed, right? But that is a question of perspective. At the end of the day, the worst thing that happens to me in my job is someone's mad at me. And that happens all the time when you're a nurse. Like, you are the target of anger all the time.
From all sides, right? Like the
Exactly.
doctor, the anesthesia.
Exactly. And
Patient.
so, yeah. So if at the end of the day, I'm going home and I'm like, okay, well, that person was really upset with me today, but it probably wasn't about me really. And no one died. no one died on my watch. So it was a good day. Yeah. All right. I think we had some questions in the chat. I don't know, Crystal, if you have more questions for me, or if we can address some of those too.
I'm not sure if Crystal is not frozen. Let's
Yeah. Hi, can you?
Oh, you're breaking up. Let's call on Pallavi.
My
I don't know if
Lori, do you want to take over?
Sure.
Hi, Christine.
Sure.
Hello.
So yeah, Pallavi had a question.
Yes.
Did I say your name right?
Hello?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you. So, Christine, this question is for you. You have translated the nursing experience into a Salesforce experience to get that first look of your resume and recruiters picking you out of your resume, right? So, but the second step is like facing that recruiter and talking to him. And at the end of the day, you have to say what you have done, what was your previous experience, and you are transitioning into your Salesforce job with as an entry level. So how would you convince that person? Because I've been trying to do that quite a long, since 3 months. I apply on LinkedIn, but the only thing that I get is getting a rejection emails. I mean, it doesn't even get picked. So how to handle this?
So if you're having trouble getting to an interview, it sounds like you're submitting resumes and no one's picking your resume for an interview. Is that correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So I would say, let me ask, are you tailoring your resume to each job application, job posting, or are you sending the same resume out to each job?
I think I made a short resume, which is a 1 page, which has few business process lingos or the Salesforce lingos. And then I just send the common one, which is on the LinkedIn, and just send the same resume to the jobs.
Okay. So I think the best strategy to getting past the resume picking phase and getting to yourself to an interview is to tailor your resume to each job application you submit. And when I say tailor, I mean tailor. So a job description will have line items of what they're looking for in the job description. It could be under required duties. It could be under something called desired qualifications. It could be under like nice to haves, but not necessary. And I would literally go line by line and say, here's this bullet point. Let's say it says experience with end user testing, just as an example. Or you're going to be responsible for end user testing. I would come over here, and I use split window on my computer so I could see the job description here and my resume here. And line by line, I use the same exact words that are in the job posting, maybe flip the sentence around or something like that, so that you are using the same words, like end user testing, marketing cloud, admin experience, or experience with flow. So it's a line by line comparison. A lot of the times these days, I think that it's not even a human looking through those resumes. I think it's a computer these days.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. That's what
and that computer is looking for keywords, and you don't know which keywords the computer is looking for. So just put them all in there. Yeah, that would be my first piece of advice for you.
Okay. And second thing, the second stage is once a recruiter calls you. So how would you convince him?
So that's going to be a combination. A lot of job interview processes are more than one interview these days. So the first interview might be with this recruiter, and you are essentially going to do exactly what I spoke about earlier, which is relate your healthcare experience. So I talked about end user testing. I talked about stakeholder management. I talked about prioritization as a nurse, and you just put that into technical speak, because the recruiter doesn't necessarily know the technical skills of Salesforce. They're just trying to make sure you're a valid candidate before they pass you on to the actual hiring team, right? So as long as you're speaking that technical language and you can hit some key phrases that is really just a verbalization of their job description, he's going to pass you on to the hiring team.
Okay.
Once you get to the hiring team, you're going to have to beef it up a little bit more. So you can go into more details on how your healthcare experience is directly relevant to Salesforce. And then you're going to need to talk about your hands-on experience. If you're not doing a development program or anything like that, there are a lot of ways to get hands-on experience on your own, whether that's a formalized program like a clicked, or Lori and I are both part of Salesforce Talent Alliance Healthcare Heroes cohort, which offers a collaboration with Clicked to get hands-on experience, and it's totally free. Or I think I forgot this in my interview process. Trailhead is hands-on experience. If you are doing badges, you are doing hands-on Salesforce stuff. You can use work that you've done for a badge or a super badge as your work experience, because you are literally applying business use cases and translating them into Salesforce. So again, once you get to the hiring team, it's going to be talking up your healthcare experience to make you to essentially legitimize your healthcare experience directly in relation to Salesforce, and then talking about your hands-on technical stuff in technical speak. And there are a lot of YouTube videos on how you can really up your technical interviews. There's a good resource called Salesforce Ben that has a lot of practice questions for technical interviews and interview questions based on the role that you're going for. So if you're going for an admin or a BA or a junior dev or a consultant or something like that, I would look up Salesforce Ben for some example interview questions.
Okay. I am a Click member, already done 2 sprints.
Awesome.
And even I recently somebody told me about the Alliance cohorts. So I tried to join in that, but I think they have 2 options. One is the partner and the other one, I don't remember exactly, but both don't allow a user to join in as
Pallavi,
a member. Yes.
can I just address that? So the Talents Alliance, it's by cohort. There's going to be another in spring. We just cannot accommodate everyone. So if you're trying to get into the Talent Alliance on the Trailblazer community, you will get denied if you were not accepted at the beginning of this cohort. So you'll just have to wait till we announce again the Salesforce fundamentals for the spring cohort. And if you don't mind, we're going to proceed with our regular questions. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Christine, continuing with our getting to know more about your journey. When you are about to make that switch, what were your fears before finally deciding that you were going to take this leap? And what were your challenges that you faced before you got your first certificate?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, there are some kind of qualitative and some quantitative answers to that question. When I first got into Salesforce, I actually went to PRN status in my nursing job so that I could have more time and more energy to focus on Salesforce. And I had a lot of imposter syndrome. Still have that. I think that's an ongoing theme for pretty much everybody these days. But as a healthcare worker getting into tech, and to be honest, I'm not really a techie person. I never have the most up-to-date gadgets. I really never worked with software other than just as a general user before getting into Salesforce. So I had a lot of imposter syndrome of like, wow, am I really going to be a tech worker? Am I really going to be a developer? Because my impression of everything tech before that was that you had to go to a coding boot camp. And I wasn't doing coding. So I had a lot of fear about being legitimate. I had a lot of fear about not being able to do it, just failing in general. I had a lot of fear about stepping out of a job that I was already really good at. Like, I just felt like I was a really good nurse. I knew how to do my job. I showed up every day and knew essentially what to expect, right? Wild things happen in healthcare all the time, but at least you kind of know to anticipate what kind of wild, what flavor of wild. Whereas in Salesforce and being a tech worker, just being so new and being a beginner just was really scary, right? And I had a lot of anxiety about not finding that first job and being unemployed. And I'm really the main like provider for my family. So taking a pay cut to take a risk to do this career change was really scary. I think networking helped so much with that. Making friends in the Oana helped so much because everybody was in the same boat, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or you're well into the ecosystem, you're constantly finding things that you don't know how to do. And people with 10 years of experience are still utilizing Google to solve their work problems, and realizing that I didn't have to know absolutely everything to start as a Salesforce admin was really reassuring. I think those were really my like general fears in doing a career change, and then just being in tech in general, because I didn't have that identity at first, which is another reason why I think leaning into the Scrum Master role has been a really good fit for me. Crystal and I were talking, and Scrum Master is so much like being a charge nurse. It's so much like being a triage nurse, because as a Scrum Master, I'm not directly interacting necessarily and developing with the product, which is our Salesforce instance, right? I'm not necessarily hands-on keyboard, but I am kind of the party host that brings everybody together and makes sure everyone has what they need and facilitates the conversations constantly. And that's much more my strength, versus I watch my developers sort through bugs and solution, and they are so talented. They're so technically experienced and proficient. And I just never felt like that was part of my identity. And realizing that there is a place for everybody in Salesforce was really comforting. It took me a little bit to figure that out. You don't have to be a tech expert. Maybe you do have to get your admin cert to get started, because apparently you can't go to a BA without getting your admin cert, because you got to learn the language, right? But you don't have to be an architect to be successful. This ecosystem needs everybody. This ecosystem needs lots of different skill sets. My developers could not do what I do. I could not do what they do, which is why it's a symbiotic relationship between us. I facilitate all the things, they do the technical, and we're happy that way. That's why we succeed, right? So I think embracing the fact that you don't have to be highly technical, and there's a lot of different options in this career, also kind of helped me get over my identity crisis of like, oh my gosh, am I really a tech worker now? That's crazy.
Yeah, in relation to that, I had a recent experience at work. We were trying to get everyone on the same page with the GitHub, to commit the changes, et cetera, et cetera. So even the declarative developers, which I am as a solution engineer, we are trying to learn this GitHub.
These
And
are my
then-
devs right here.
Hey guys.
One of the developers messaged
Sorry,
me
Lori, I
and
didn't mean to
and said,
interrupt you. These are my devs right here.
hey, you declarative people, how do I get to the like the tool at the footer? Because she had to like inject a utility item. And I said, set up, go to app manager, and then click the utility. And she was like, thank you so much. And I was like, well, I feel validated now that I'm a solution engineer, declarative, and you're a developer, and we have our own expertise, I guess. So yeah,
Totally.
that was fun.
Oh, you'll get there. It sounds like you're really getting your feet wet over there.
Are you good?
Oh no, we're trying to. We need your business input.
Oh, they need me to play Scrum Master party host, y'all. You see? All right, we got about.
Nice to meet you guys.
All right.
Nice to meet you guys.
You see,
Okay.
those coding experts, they are geniuses when it comes to everything, but they cannot manage a lot of other things. So that's why I'm here.
Right, we have our roles. Okay, I guess you have somehow answered already how you manage to be visible to recruiters and hiring managers. So it's basically networking, right? How about the process of job application? Did you encounter a lot of like the technical skills assessment? Or
I think I did 2 technical interviews. One was for fast slow motion. Actually, it wasn't really an interview. They have kind of here, we'll send you a little video and you can prepare. You can essentially build out a basic version of what we need and then make a presentation about it. So I did that. And then I did a technical interview for CloudBiz. It wasn't nearly as in depth as other technical interview experiences I've heard of. So I think I kind of got lucky in that sense. And in some ways, I really feel for all you who are looking for your first job right now. I think it's a really different environment in the hiring landscape right now than it was when I got hired, which was fall of 2021. During that time, it was a little bit more like the power was in the applicant's hands. So obviously I needed to speak the language. Obviously I needed to convince them that I had experience and I was a culture fit and I would show up to work and do my job and all of that. And I needed to convince them that I had some level of technical experience. But I think at that time, I didn't need to convince them that I was a superstar in order for them to take a chance on me. And I'm hearing, I don't know what you're hearing, Lori, but I'm hearing from people who are interviewing now that it's a little bit harder, if not a lot harder out there. And you might have to razzle dazzle a little better in your technical interviews. Again, I think there are a lot of resources out there to educate yourself, both just building stuff. I saw that Lori put in like use your own life activities to come up with projects. Great example, because not only does it give you hands-on experience, it also gives you something to show in your interview. That was one of the things that I really leaned on, because they can, in a technical interview, they can ask you a really vague question, right? And you might not always know the answer. It can be, I can't even come up with one right now, but I don't know if this worked, but what I would do is try to answer the question as best I can, and then say, actually, I think I did something similar to that in my dev org, and then I'd screen share and show them something that I built, which a little bit like takes the pressure off of me not answering their question perfectly, and a little bit shows them that I take initiative, that I'm interested, that I do hands-on things on my own time. As far as using your life experience, my husband is actually a musician. He performs and he has a music studio, so he has a lot of students. And so I built him a dev org and put all of his business stuff into Salesforce. So we don't even use QuickBooks anymore. For his small business, we use Salesforce everything. I run reports, I do dashboards for him. He has one object and he has 4 different record types for the different kinds of activities that he has. And so that's what I would show in my interview to be like, here's how I applied it. for a small business user client, right? Because you can pretty everything up. Like they didn't need to know it was my husband. It's like, oh yeah, I did this project for a small business client in my community. Here's the user case, right? So I think the hands-on stuff is really essential, not only for interviewing y'all, but to actually do your job after you get the job, right? Because getting the job is one thing, and then doing the job is a different thing. And then preparation for the technical interview. There's YouTube videos on how to prepare for it. I really like Salesforce Ben. I know I've plugged him, their company so many times, but they literally have example interview questions for technical interviews based on the role you're going for. So I don't see AJ on here anymore. Maybe he's behind my chat now. But he was talking about wanting to go for a BA role. You're not going to get a real technical in BA roles, but they have interview questions for a BA. If you're going for a junior dev, just look up Salesforce Ben junior dev technical interview, literally Google, and it'll come up with an article with questions that they may or may not ask you, and you can just practice those. So I think the combination of prep for the interview and prep for the actual Salesforce job is what's going to get you through the technical.
Great tips. Okay, so how is your day in the life as an implementation Salesforce implementation specialist in your current job, like morning to
Sure.
afternoon?
So I'll kind of give you a description of my life as like a junior dev and now my life as a Scrum Master, because they're very different. My junior dev life was a little bit more mellow. I would have my morning stand-up was at 8:30 in the morning, my time. It was about a half hour, and I was assigned stories for the sprint, and I would go off and I would do my stories. We use Zoom and Teams. Those are our communication platforms, and our kind of company culture is that we log into Zoom and just kind of hang out in Zoom on mute, no camera, and we do our own thing. And then if you need help, you kind of come off Zoom or come off mute and ask for help or talk about something. Or if you're working in conjunction with another dev on a story, you can both come off mute or go into a different Zoom room and collaborate that way. And then at the end of the day, I would have my end of day stand up. And that was around 4:30, I think. Throughout that day, I might have like a business meeting to do story refinement, or if I had a question, or if I wanted to demo what I was building to make sure I was on the right track. It was kind of mellow, honestly. My life as a Scrum Master is much more high energy, fast paced. Part of that, I will tell you, is that the Air Force is up against a deadline because we are sunsetting the legacy system, if you want some buzzwords, which essentially means like we're turning that off and everything's got to be on Salesforce end of April. And that means as a dev team, we have to have everything built out and tested essentially by the end of March, because there is a gap at the end of that where they have to do end user training. They call it OCM, Organization Change Management. And it's a lot of like them capturing screenshots and making job aids and making little tutorial videos. And they call it doing a roadshow where some of our business people are going around to the different bases all over the country, and they're doing end user training on the new systems. So because we're up against that deadline, that is why I'm in Denver. That is why I've been in Denver for like 6 weeks, off and on for I think a total of 6 weeks since the beginning of the year. So I don't know that my life as a Scrum Master right now is a good representation of what being a Scrum Master is, because I work a lot right now. We start at 7 a.m. Mountain Time, and we're still working. It's 6 p.m. here now. We're going to be working probably till about 7 p.m. tonight. So that's a lot of long hours. It's a lot of hours right now, and we're burning the candle at both ends. But I don't want to scare anybody away. I don't think that's normal. I think our dev deadline for actual dev done, not tested, just done, is next Friday. And then we go into our formal testing cycle, which is about a month long. So we're going home next Friday, which is why we're burning. So the midnight oil is so hard right now. It's just trying to make that deadline. But as far as day-to-day activities go, it's a lot of meetings. I have a morning stand-up with everybody. We call it all call at 8 a.m. We do our technical scrum at 7:30 a.m. to get the dev team all on the same page as to what we did, what we're doing before we meet with our business partners. Then we do our all call and meet with the business partners. Then we dev all day. And then at the end of the day, we have our end of day wrap, which is at 4 p.m. Mountain, so that the business partners can then do their outbrief to their leadership. And it's an interesting structure that I work in because I am working for the Department of Defense. And Lori has some experience working with government organizations with the VA right now. There's a lot of talking. With like this group of people and then this group of people and then all the group is like a Venn diagram of like who you're talking to all the time. And it's been interesting learning the customs and courtesies of the Air Force. I do not have any military background. So I got hired into the civil service as just a civilian. And so I had to learn a lot of those acronyms and things like who to address first in a meeting based on rank. Things like who you can call by their first name and who you can't, which is a little bit similar to like when I was a nurse and I would talk to a doctor, like I could call her Marjorie in our little like work area, but when we were in the patient room, it was Dr. Katz. It was a little bit of that like respectful boundary, and language is important. So the Air Force has been interesting as an employer, just as an outsider, because most of my coworkers came from like the regular Air Force or the Air Force Reserves or the Guard or something. So they had all of that already. So it's been interesting just integrating into that culture. But as to my day-to-day, it's hectic right now. It's long hours. I will say one advantage to being a government employee. I know that like my dev team, they are KPMG consultants who work with us, and they just work until it's done. And that's it. Whereas I'm a civilian, so I work until it's done, but I get paid overtime. Every single minute over 40 hours is overtime for me. So that's one perk of being a civilian. I think maybe our base pay is probably a little lower, but it's working out to be about the same, honestly.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you like most and what do you like the least about your job? If you don't want to answer the least question, that's fine too.
No, that's okay. It's okay. I think it's important to address. I don't want to call it a beef, but one of the struggles that I have with the OANA is that it's all from my perspective, it seems to be really focused on sunshine and rainbows, and doesn't always acknowledge the struggles and the just challenges of working in tech. So I like to talk about them. So the thing that I like the most from a personal perspective is the work-life balance, which I know I just said that I'm working long hours, but outside of this, like isolated, we got to get to the deadline. Like I do have really good work-life balance outside of this little sprint. And I really appreciate the fact that I can get time off all the time, whenever I want it. I've never had a time off request not been approved. I really like building things, whether it's me, myself, or my team, when we take literally nothing and then we go all the way through and we have a whole product, like a software product that we've created, is so cool. It's almost like you're birthing this like new thing that didn't exist before. Like, this is awesome. And then you see users use it and they like it. Sometimes they don't, but most of the time they do if you're doing your job right. And seeing them use your product is just so satisfying. It's really awesome. My particular job I like because I have quite a few friends who are in the military and I know their struggles are real, and the job that I'm doing directly affects them and makes their life easier. Like talking about legacy systems, they previously had to log into like 5 different platforms to do all of their HR processes, and now they have one. It's amazing that they can actually like focus on doing their real job. I know as a nurse, I was so frustrated because I felt like I spent half my time doing things that weren't really my job. My job is to take care of my patient. My job is to ensure mom and baby are healthy, make sure the patient makes it through surgery properly. Like, that is my job. Why am I charting? Why am I doing XYZ that are not my job? And I feel like in my job now, I'm helping airmen, Air Force members, do their job instead of like struggle with their HR processes. Like, the airman experience has improved. They can get back to their real work because we've made their HR bullshit better, right? Easier. So I think that's what I like the most. What I like the least, I find that there's a lot of stakeholder conflict, at least in my organization. I don't know if anybody has DoD experience, but there's like regular Air Force, there's Reserve Air Force, and there's the National Guard Air Force. And so I have 3 different business partners, and they're like warring factions. So I feel like I'm definitely the peacemaker, have a little bit of a diplomatic role in trying to get everybody to be on the same page. One thing I don't like right now is just the travel. I don't like being away from home. I never really signed up to travel. This was a little bit part of a promotion to the Scrum Master role, that they're like, well, you won't be traveling regularly, but we really need you in person because we need to make this deadline. Like, this is a for real emergency situation on our hands, so we just need you to be in person. And I'm a team player, for better or worse, so I said, okay, I'll go. But I don't particularly like being away from home. One of the reasons I got into Salesforce was that I could work from home. So I'm hoping that ends at some point after we hit this deadline. That's probably the part that I like the least right now, but I think the change is coming.
Yeah, I hope that it's not going to be like repeatedly done throughout your stay there.
One of the things I'm nervous about is like, if you're successful at something, people want you to do it more. So if we are in person and we're hitting this deadline, they're going to just put this team on a new emergency. I'm really nervous about that, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see how good you are at saying no.
It's a skill I need to develop, Lori, honestly. Yeah.
Me too. Anyway, so looking at your career trajectory, like maybe 3-5 years from now, what do you think is it gonna be?
I really like being a Scrum Master. I really want to be a project manager. I want to move up into being a program manager, because I think I am a really good party host, is essentially how I put it. And I think I'm really good at supporting people. I don't think I'm as interested in technical solutions outside of being able to translate between business and dev team. I understand to the point of like words, not code. And that's kind of where I like it. So Scrum Master, project manager kind of stuff is what I'm interested in. I would really like to get involved in something healthcare, because I am not involved in any healthcare Salesforce projects right now. So that's where I'm trying to pivot towards in the next probably 2 years. It's just something where I can be involved in a healthcare application.
Maybe we should snag you.
Maybe. One of the reasons I wanted to get into Salesforce was I felt like Salesforce could really improve the lives of bedside nurses, and that whole getting back to what your actual job is. Like, if you can make the tech part easier, nurses will spend less time charting and more time with their patients. That's what we're there for, like patient satisfaction scores and all of that. But like, nurses quit constantly. I'm one of them. Crystal's one of them. Lori's one of them. We quit constantly because we're burnt out. We got into it to take care of people, and that's not what our job ends up being. So I think we could really improve the nurse burnout rate if we could improve the tech part of it. And I'm hoping Health Cloud is the solution. I haven't had the time to really like go deep into that application, but I hope.
Me neither, to be honest. I mean, we're using Health Cloud in what we're building, but I wasn't there when they started, so I'm not really sure what we have right now, which components came from Health Cloud. I don't know. But anyway. All right. So after a stressful day, how do you recenter and de-stress? Or after at the end of the week, let's say.
Yeah. So I have a dog, and she is I know a lot of people do this, but she's legitimately like my emotional support dog. I walk her 3 times a day when I'm home, and just walking around the neighborhood without any tech. Like, I don't put headphones in. I leave my phone at home and just disengage entirely from screens is a big stress reliever for me. And then I also play the fiddle. I'm in a bluegrass band.
Nice.
One of the exciting things about being a Salesforce person is, again, the time off. And I actually last week was invited to do a tour in Germany in September for 2.5 weeks. And I can actually say yes, because I know I can get the time off. As a nurse, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But I'm gonna go tour in Germany for 2 weeks in September. I know, I'm so excited.
Awesome.
Yeah. So music and dogs is really it for me, and spending time with my family.
And what non-Salesforce personal goal would you like to accomplish in the next 3 years?
Ooh, this sounds really dumb, but I would really like to be able to do a pull-up.
I'm never able to. I should do that too.
I just hang. That's all I can do. That's all. I can't even so that's one of my personal goals, is to be able to do a pull-up. I'm not working very hard on it right now. I need to reprioritize that goal, apparently, but 3 years is a long time, so we'll be able to.
Well, hanging for 30 seconds is even a struggle for me, because you know how prolonged sitting and prolonged standing, it compresses your spine. And so one of the things that I do is just hang on the bar.
Yeah.
Kind of stretch that again. Oh
Yeah.
my God, 10 seconds more. It's hard. And final question, what advice would you give to the newly transitioning Salesforce professionals?
We've talked about a lot of strategies today, and I'm all about the actual nitty-gritty tips to get started in the ecosystem. Wow, just pushed my chair down with my leg accidentally. So sorry, I just got shorter. We've talked about a lot of the nitty-gritty strategies to get yourself that first job, to get into the ecosystem and be successful. But I think overall, self-care and grace is really, really important. And it's really hard to be a beginner as an adult. You're really used to it as a kid because you're a beginner at everything, right? but everyone in here comes from healthcare and is trying to go into tech. That's really scary. You're taking a really big risk. You're learning a whole new industry and lots of different skills. You're putting yourself outside your comfort zone constantly. So I think giving yourself some grace, taking care of your mental health is what is going to really get you there in the long run. Because if you are burnt out from Salesforce, if you are tired and you never take a day off, your enthusiasm for it is just going to wane and you're not going to be able to play that long game. So if you're feeling burnt out, take a day off. Trailhead will be there. The job applications will be there. Just take a day off. It's okay. There's no rush. You're going to get there. So I think that would be the biggest piece of advice I would give you.
Well, we have learned a lot from you. Thank you for sharing. Oh my God, especially the transferable skills and translating them. Oh, those are golden. I never really thought of them that way, but so much great tips with that. Are there any more questions from the audience? If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
I also, I will say that I probably need to get back to work a little bit, but if you have a question, feel free to message me on LinkedIn, or connect with me. I don't post very often there right now because I am just so busy with work, but I always respond to my direct messages. I'm happy to take a look at your resume if you want to send it over to anybody on this call. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to send you my resume if you just need like a version to start from and you don't even know how to get there.
You don't have to steal your resume.
You could totally steal it. Just put your name at the top. I'm fine with it.
Very good. Very good.
Is it okay if I ask one quick question?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering, so I'm building more experiences through like the Click program and the Talent Stacker program, and I'm trying to do a volunteer program as well. When do we stop highlighting the healthcare part? Say it was a big part of my life, but yet I'm accumulating all these experiences. When would be a good time to stop sharing the healthcare part and just highlighting the ones you learned recently?
That's a great question. As far as your resume goes, and take my opinion with a grain of salt on everything, please. But if you have enough Salesforce experience to fill 1 to 2 pages of a resume, you can stop putting your healthcare experience on there. That's my opinion. If you don't have enough experience to fill those 1 to 2 pages, keep putting your healthcare experience on there. When it comes to interviews, they're going to go off of your resume. So if you have healthcare experience on there, you're going to need to talk about it in your interview. If you do not have any healthcare experience on your resume and you have enough to talk about with Salesforce, just talk about that. That's my opinion.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us your precious time on your busy days nowadays. And I hope you have a great rest. If you have to go, feel free to leave. I will just have to make announcement to the group before we end. Okay. Everyone. So just so you know, March 2nd, we haven't put out the invite, but March 2nd, we will be holding a session with Shannon Gregg, who is the organizer of the Life Sciences Dream In. So she's got a lot of connections. Bring your questions. She's got a lot of knowledge about the other industries who are doing Salesforce, industries in the health and life sciences. Okay. Second, so that's on March 2nd, right? On March 23rd, that's a Thursday, right? Okay. I haven't done the Zoom invite, but I plan, because I've been talking with Shayla Mart, our contact for the Salesforce Talent Alliance, and I presented to her a slide deck that I had been preparing for the group. and she already approved it. We're just going to go through some more suggestions that she has, but it's essentially ready for presentation. And I will present that to the Salesforce Talent Alliance, but I told her I originally planned to present it to the healthcare heroes. So aside from that session for the Talent Alliance, I'm going to present it to you on March 23rd, 7 p.m. EST. Okay. So that's March 2nd, March 23rd. And then in April, on April 20, I talked with someone who built an app for her husband. For the husband, her husband works at the anesthesia department, surgical anesthesia department, and they use Salesforce to keep track of the equipment, what each doctor's preferences are when they are preparing the table for surgery. You know how that is. If you've worked in a ICU or surgery department, right? Some doctors, they have their own nitpicky stuff that you have to prepare. So they use Salesforce, so they are going to demonstrate the app. Just to give you an idea. So if you're still working in, let's say you're a physical therapist or you're in the lab, you can get some idea from how they used Salesforce to help them manage their day-to-day activities in their specific department, right? That hospital actually had, when I saw that demonstration last year, they were in the process of talking with the Salesforce people. The stakeholders were going to talk with the Salesforce people to kind of like get into a deal. So that will be a good way to create your own project, especially if you're targeting HLS companies to leverage your background to land your first Salesforce role. So that's what's in store for now. Okay, that's my announcement. So I hope you all have a great night. Thank you for attending. I love you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Lori, for everything you do for us and for the opportunities coming up.
You are so
Everybody.
welcome.
Thank
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.